And if it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats. And they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
What's up, everyone? We are just days away from a complete shutdown of the US government, and you're probably hearing a lot of political noise about who's to blame. Today, we're cutting through that noise to show you exactly who is driving this crisis, why they're doing it, and who will pay the price. First, the basics. Every year, Congress has to pass a budget to fund the government. If they can't agree by the deadline, September 30th, the government shuts down. This isn't some abstract DC drama. A shutdown has real, immediate consequences.
A memo just leaked last night that Donald Trump intends to fire up to 1.9 million federal employees if the government shuts down a week. How is he able to do this? Because what typically happens when the government shuts down is that the federal jobs that are paid for by discretionary funds, which is what Congress sets every year, are furloughed, essentially. So people who train air traffic controllers, for example, or people who are park rangers and training park rangers, these people oftentimes are told to go home, they can't do anything, and that when the government shutdown is over, they return. What Donald Trump is suggesting is instead of furloughing those people, he will fire them. What does that mean for you? It means that EPA field inspectors, it means HUD specialists who help you with affordable housing. It means Social Security claims processors who are handling new claims will be completely fired, not even furloughed. Now, there are people who are considered essential employees, like your air traffic controllers, who work through this. They do not get paid. And why is he doing this? Is because he is intimidating Democrats into bending the knee so that they don't shut down the government. When I was chief of staff at Labor, I saw how much harm Trump did the first time, because there were so many open positions that inspected work sites for safety, for example, that even to get to the baseline of what happened before Trump's administration in terms of hiring would take years. He is trying to completely destroy government as we know it, rebuild it in his image, and the impact may be generational. Is any of this legal? Probably not, but this is what Donald Trump does. He acts first and worries about the legal ramifications later. The implications and the harm for our country are dire, and we are just getting started on how bad this could be.
The White House is threatening mass federal layoffs if the government shuts down next week, not just the typical temporary furloughs that we have seen with many shutdowns recently. They're talking about permanent layoffs, another Trump-backed purge of the federal workforce. White House Budget Director Russ Vought sent a memo to agencies yesterday ordering them to prepare. He preemptively blamed the Democrats. Quote, "We remain hopeful that Democrats in Congress will not trigger a shutdown, and the steps outlined above will not be necessary." House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries hit back. He called Vought a malignant political hack and said he would not be intimidated.
Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. The country has been lectured all year about how Republicans are in charge. If the government shuts down, it will shut down because Donald Trump and Republicans in the House and the Senate have made that decision to intentionally inflict pain on the American people.
Hi, everyone. This is Lisa Desjardins from PBS NewsHour. We've had a lot of news on the potential for a government shutdown, and let me take you through it. First of all, last night, NewsHour's Liz Landers obtained the memo from the Office of Management and Budget directing agencies basically what to do if we get in a shutdown. Now, part of this is usual housekeeping, telling agencies they've got to get in their contingency plans. But some of it is unusual. The fact is that the Trump administration has taken down from view the contingency plans that had been in place. The other unusual part, highly unusual, is that the Trump administration told agencies if in fact there is a government shutdown, they would like them to be ready to proceed with reductions in force. That's mass layoffs of government employees. They specified some categories for that, but basically it would be layoffs of employees whose funding had run out, and the funding would run out in a shutdown for most government agencies, and those employees which do not meet or align with the Trump administration's goals. So that's a broad category. We don't know exactly what those risks would look like, We also don't know if that threat would be carried out because the reduction in force process is not an instant one. Once RIFs are announced, they must go through a process, give some timely notice to employees. But all of this is about the political leverage that the Trump administration is hoping to gain over Democrats. They want Democrats to feel the pressure to support the House Republican-passed funding bill. Now, that's a short-term bill. It just funds government through about November 21st, right before Thanksgiving. Democrats have said no. Senate Democrats, who hold the power to block this, they said no, we will not support that because we want the Trump administration to reverse some of its, we think, way heavy-handed and inappropriate policies. That includes the rescissions that the Trump administration put in place, which essentially roll back congressional funding. Democrats' argument, in part, is that why should we pass funding for the government if the Trump administration is just going to roll it back anyway? Democrats also say they're fighting for health care, but Republicans say they're willing to talk about health care changes. They just don't want to do it while government's being held hostage. That's a lot to happen in just the last couple of days, but where does it leave us? We are, in fact, now firmly on the track toward a government shutdown, even though there are 5 days to avoid one. Now, they could just come up with a short 1 or 2 day or 1 week funding plan. That is what usually would happen. But I have to tell you, talking with both sides here, they are locked in. Both sides see reasons for them to hurl toward a shutdown. They think the other will be blamed. And those are the conditions that generally lead to a shutdown.
That's right. Food assistance for millions, disability benefits for our veterans, even small business loans. All of it could be delayed or stopped. Not to mention the massive economic fallout.
They're getting warnings now. It would be $1 billion impact every week that the government is shut down. That's according to Tourism Economics. $1 billion in losses because of disruptions in air travel or train trips, because national parks and museums would likely close. We certainly have seen that happen in past shutdowns. U.S. Travel, which is the trade group representing the industry, sent a letter to congressional leaders calling a shutdown a wholly preventable blow to America's travel economy. Quote, the longer a shutdown drags on, the more likely we are to see longer TSA lines, flight delays and cancellations, national parks in disrepair, and unnecessary delays in modernizing travel infrastructure. There's a lot of those projects going on. This was according to CEO Jeff Freeman in a news release. They're pointing to an Ipsos survey that showed 60% of Americans say they would cancel or avoid trips by air in the event of a shutdown. But look, the travel industry has already seen softer demand in the second quarter through summer's end. International travel is noticeably off, especially from Canada. Hotel executives publicly have grappled with shrinking government business because jobs were slashed earlier this year. There were fewer government people traveling, staying at hotels. If you have whole departments shuttered and federal workers furloughed, that most certainly would hit the travel industry, not just hotels, but restaurants that cater then to government workers who go to conferences and things like that. So it has a ripple effect beyond just TSA lines, so to speak.
Right. You guys have heard me talk about two very important things that are happening next week. The first is Kexit bringing in all top military brass from around the world to one place. And the second is that our government could shut down. Let's connect the dots. First, here's why the government is on the verge of shutting down. Republicans wrote a funding bill that gave extra security money to politicians and judges, but at the same time slashed healthcare programs like ACA subsidies and Medicaid fixes that millions of Americans both need and depend on. Democrats refused to trade your health for political comfort. And now Trump's blaming them for the pain he's about to inflict on all of us. Now, if the government shuts down, let's talk about what it means. I mean, people lose their jobs, services are delayed, our economy takes another hit. And also, by the way, when I say people lose their jobs, I'm not talking about furloughs. He is having agencies create reduction in force plans. That's not a furlough. That is a permanent layoff. But what else happens? Congress stops counting legislative days, and we just hit 218 votes to release the fucking Epstein files. But before a vote can happen, it has to sit for 7 days, 7 legislative days, not calendar days. A shutdown pauses that clock. And that delay benefits every single person listed in those fucking files, except for the victims. Now let's scroll back a little bit, right? The day before the shutdown, Hegseth pulling every top general and admiral off of their post into Quantico. Just outside of DC, by the way. That leaves our forces around the world without their top leadership. It puts all of our commanders in one room. That is a national fucking security risk. Now let's go back to the shutdown really quick. When people are laid off, they're going to be broke, they're going to be angry, and they're going to take to the streets to protest, as they should, because it is their First fucking Amendment right. But we have a titty baby trigger happy president who likes to throw tantrums, and he is going to try to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now this Insurrection Act legally lets him deploy troops and federal officers to the streets. That escalation is going to cause even more unrest, even less transparency, and even more room for overreach and power grabs. This is a setup that benefits that orange, crusty, diaper-wearing fuck. And we all fell for it. Pay attention, because this is not left versus right. This is the power versus the people.
So who is refusing to keep the government open? The Republican Party, led by Donald Trump, controls the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They have all the power they need to pass a clean funding bill right now. But they won't. Why? Because they are holding our government hostage to force through an extreme agenda. An agenda that has nothing to do with responsible spending.
September 30th, like the end of this month, that is the end of the fiscal year. So if Congress doesn't pass a full budget or at least a CR by then, funding runs out and the government shuts down. So first things first, CR stands for Continuing Resolution. It's Congress's way of buying time when they can't agree on a real budget. So instead of passing the 12 separate appropriations bills that are supposed to fund every part of the government, they pass a CR that says, keep spending at last year's levels for now, and then we'll just fight about the rest of it all later. It's not a solution, it's procrastination. So now here's what just happened this past week. The House did pass a CR, and it wasn't just a blank check, thankfully. Conservatives actually secured some wins in this version. The bill now goes to the Senate, and that's where the real fight begins. Because even though President Trump is in the White House, the Senate's still pretty split, and Democrats are already talking about stripping out the cuts and removing the border funding and putting their own pet projects back in. The two chambers have to agree on one version before September 30th, or we are looking at a government shutdown. So here's where we're at. The House did its job and passed a CR with some conservative wins. Okay, cuts to domestic programs, funding for defense and the border. The Senate fight will decide if those wins survive. And then even if they do, this is just another Band-Aid. The question is whether Republicans are finally going to use this moment, this time, as leverage for real spending reforms, or whether they'll cave to keep the headlines quiet and push the fight down the road again. Because at some point, somebody has to stop kicking the can. So let me hear from you. Do you think Republicans should hold the line on spending, even if it risks a shutdown? And do you think that Congress will ever go back to passing a real budget on time? Or are CRs just our new normal? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand.
That sounds reasonable, right? But what they aren't telling you is what's hidden inside their demands. Democrats have been trying to negotiate, but they refuse to trade away the health and safety of millions of Americans.
Donald Trump and the Republicans are threatening to shut down government because they rather take health care away from millions of people than keep the government open. Look, at the end of the month, the federal government runs out of money, and that means Congress needs to pass a new budget. But here's the thing. This budget fight is about saving health care for millions of people. Health insurance premiums are skyrocketing. Hospitals and clinics are closing. Cancer treatment for children is being canceled. Why? All because Republicans in Congress gutted health care like the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. But rather than address this health care crisis, the Republicans just want to shut government down. It's amazing the lengths these Republicans will go to make sure that a visit to the doctor is even more expensive. Republicans need to get serious, restore health care, and avoid a government shutdown.
And that's not an exaggeration. The Republican bill includes massive cuts to healthcare, threatening the Affordable Care Act subsidies that make insurance affordable for working families. And they're not stopping there. Trump is also blaming the shutdown on a refusal to accept his extreme anti-trans policies.
They want to have transgender for everybody. These people are crazy, the Democrats. So if it has to shut down, it'll have to shut down. But they're the ones that are shutting down.
Mr. President, furloughs are very typical when the government shuts down. Why is the administration directing federal layoffs of federal workers this time around?
Well, this is all caused by the Democrats. They asked us to do something that's totally unreasonable. They never change. They want to give money away to illegally, people that entered our country illegally. They want to give them massive federal money. And we don't want to do that because it means everyone's going to just keep pouring back. Right now we have absolutely perfect borders like you haven't seen in many years. Even better than I had great borders during my 4 years, but these borders are stone cold closed. You can only come into our country legally now. But the Democrats want to give it all away. They want to open up the borders. Take a look at that. Big thing. They want to open borders again after what we're going through now, getting rid of prisoners, getting rid of all of these people dropped out from mental institutions, drug dealers, drug addicts, everything. They're putting everybody into our country. It's all ended now. But this is what Schumer wants. This is what the Democrats want. They want to have, and they want to take our money. We're doing well because of tariffs. We're doing unbelievable. We're making more money than we ever have made.
Let's be perfectly clear. The government is not shutting down because of transgender people. It's shutting down because Donald Trump and his allies would rather inflict pain on the entire country than pass a clean budget. In fact, Trump himself canceled a meeting with Democratic leaders that was meant to find a solution. He is actively avoiding a deal.
We have some major news right now with the government shutdown just a few days away. Donald Trump and the White House, according to Politico, are preparing to, quote, exert maximum pressure and pain during this government shutdown on country. As part of doing this, the White House is preparing for mass firings across federal agencies. For example, Politico is reporting that in the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, we can see the mass firings go down from about 15,000 employees to just over 1,000 employees. What the Trump administration is essentially doing is they're saying that, well, any government program that isn't funded past September 30th, those employees won't just be furloughed, they'll be fired and they won't have a job upon return. And Trump is saying that he is essentially, if we need a government shutdown, then we're going to have a government shutdown. Right now, the deadline for a government shutdown is September 30th. It's in 4 days. If at midnight there is no deal to keep the government open, well, then we're going to enter a shutdown on October 1st. I'll provide you more updates, obviously, as we get them. So spread the word and follow along to stay updated on all the news you need to know about.
But this goes beyond a typical shutdown. This is where it gets truly terrifying. The Trump administration isn't just planning a temporary closure. They're planning a permanent purge of the federal workforce.
The White House is threatening mass federal layoffs if the government shuts down next week, not just the typical temporary furloughs that we have seen with many shutdowns recently. They're talking about permanent layoffs, another Trump-backed purge of the federal workforce. White House Budget Director Russ Vought sent a memo to agencies yesterday ordering them to prepare. He preemptively blamed the Democrats. Quote, "We remain hopeful that Democrats in Congress will not trigger a shutdown and the steps outlined above will not be necessary." House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries hit back. He called Vought a malignant political hack and said he would not be intimidated.
Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. The country has been lectured all year about how Republicans are in charge. If the government shuts down, it will shut down because Donald Trump and Republicans in the House and the Senate have made that decision to intentionally inflict pain on the American people.
A reduction in force, or RIF, isn't a furlough. It's a firing, permanent layoffs. And we know this threat is real because a federal judge just ruled that the Trump administration illegally fired thousands of federal employees in the past.
So, friends, an important ruling was just handed down by a judge in California. Now, we all saw the devastation wrought when the Trump administration callously and cavalierly fired thousands of federal government employees who were relatively new hires, folks who are on what's called probationary status. Well, a federal judge just ruled that those firings were illegal. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, the Trump administration, in its first weeks in power, directed the firing of thousands of federal government employees. And you know how much advance notice those employees got that they would be let go, that they would be terminated? Well, the firing directive went out on Friday, February 14th, and it required that the firings be accomplished.
He's telling agencies to use the shutdown to fire people whose jobs aren't consistent with the president's priorities. This isn't about saving money. It's about turning the nonpartisan civil service into a political weapon. It's about getting rid of anyone who won't pledge total loyalty to him. So let's recap. Donald Trump and his party are forcing a government shutdown. They're doing it to push through an agenda that slashes healthcare for millions and targets minority groups. And they plan to use the chaos to permanently fire thousands of public servants. This isn't a game. This will impact your family, your community, and our economy. The good news is you can do something. Call your representatives. The number for the Capitol switchboard is on the screen. Tell them to stop playing politics with our lives and pass a clean funding bill. Tell them you won't stand for it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share this video to get the word out.